I am just a few days away from heading to Tennessee to compete at Nationals. So I gotta say, I am actually really excited. I'm also terrified because I still have cutting to do, which is not an ideal position to be in. But the show always has to go on. So I'm going to go through all of the data from the past couple of weeks. Last week I skipped my check-in. I've just had so much going on. So today is kind of going to consolidate the last 2 weeks of data. And I'll talk about what my plans are for the next 4 days, because that's really all the time I have left to make any meaningful change. Because after about Thursday, as we lead into the show on Saturday, I have to pull right back on all of my training. And the reason for that is I need time for my muscle to, I guess, stop being inflamed and all puffy and retaining water. And it doesn't look good. So really, I've got until Thursday to make any more meaningful change in terms of body fat, to get some energy expenditure in. And then it's basically a light Friday and then obviously Saturday show day. So also, I'll go over the questions from YouTube. There are about half a dozen or so, which I'll cover at the end. And then I want to take a moment as we wrap up to talk a little bit about our upcoming challenge, which is our Love Yourself Fit program that kicks off on July 3rd. So please stick around for that. I'll talk a little bit more about what that all entails too. So, oh my gosh, the last couple of weeks have just been, I don't know, it just feels like a blur at this point. All the days feel exactly the same. They've all been really busy. I've got lots of things going on in my personal life, the companies, the businesses, got new projects popping up left, right, and center. And it has been really exciting, but also just really busy. So it's all just felt like a little bit of a blur, to be honest. But I am happy I got a little bit more sleep this past week, just kind of prioritizing getting myself to bed and also being a bit more strict with myself in setting some boundaries and saying no to certain obligations that I might have otherwise said, yes, throw it on me, I'll look after that task. I've just had to kind of set better boundaries this week with everybody in my team and say no a little bit more, but I will be eager to kind of bring all of those things back in, I guess, next week once the show is done. So let's have a look at some of my numbers. I want to start with the weight column because I know that seeing that scale number for anybody that's going through an intentional fat loss phase can be such a mind game. And if I was paying attention to numbers on the scale this week, I would probably have quit 2 weeks ago. But I guess looking at all of the other metrics that kind of play into why your weight does or does not do certain things is so important, because it doesn't really tell us the whole story if we're just looking at those numbers. And I know I probably am belaboring the point. I talk about this all the time, but this week, like, my average weekly weight is at 136, which is like 2.5 pounds from where it has been previously, in this kind of second little stint of cutting. So I got my cycle this week, and as frustrating as it is to see that number back up, I'm just like, oh my God, this is where I was when I started. But it's also, it's being influenced by my menstrual cycle. That had a massive impact, but I'm also glad it came this week because it means that Saturday show day, I'm not going to have it. Now, based on my trajectory of period or menstrual cycle, if we go over and have a look at my tracking sheet here, the due date for me getting my period was going to be show day. So I usually am pretty routine and regular right around that 28 to 30 day mark. I know that I haven't pulled the numbers down here, but just trust me when I say it was going to be right on show day. And I actually got it day 21. So you can see my last cycle was back on May 23, or at least that was the last day here. I'm just pointing to the cells on my check-in sheet, and they've been pretty short, like 4 days. Very painful. I have no idea what's going on with my hormones at the moment. One of my first to-do list items is get myself back into my GP and kind of just get on top of my health in general. I haven't been feeling that great. My sleep hasn't been good for years. I know that it's obviously made worse when you're stressed and when you've got low calories and you're in a calorie deficit, but I have just been in chronic pain, which is not a place I want to be. years. So I'm actually very excited to just take a bit of a step back and just start getting on top of some other health things. But anyway, I got my cycle on day 21. So it's come early, which is good. It means that I won't have the same kind of high risk, bloating and water retention around show day. But that doesn't mean that I'm not also still going to continue to do some of those anti-inflammatory processes that I might have talked about in my previous peak week. I'll talk about that again today as we go through all of my numbers, but happy that it's not next week or next weekend. Yeah, I mean, looking at the number here on the scale was a little disheartening, but I've also got to be logical about it. I can see that with each week, I am starting to make more and more progress, but I am probably going to end up coming in a little bit softer than what I was at my last show. And there is nothing I can do about that. My, 6 weeks kind of leading into this show, unfortunately, didn't give me enough time to kind of bring myself back in the way I'd like to. The weight that I went back up to between my shows. So again, if we go back up to my original data from my peak week, you can see here there's a big gap, and that was my show week last time. So I believe my show was on Saturday the 18th of May. I was sitting at around 133 for that show, which is great. And then I just had a nice intuitive mindful eating week, and my weight kind of popped back up to 136, which is fine. However, what I didn't anticipate was the following 4 weeks being as crazy as they were. And it just meant that I couldn't get, my activity in. So the biggest downfall for me over the last couple of weeks, if we come over here, you can see my weekly energy expenditure has missed the mark every single week almost. So I had this week here where I came in at 5,100. So again, I'm a few hundred calories shy of what I know I needed to do to get back on track. And then this week it was substantially lower. This was a really tough week where I had very little sleep. You may recall I was having like 5 hours of sleep just because of lots of work demands. So I was getting up to 4,300 calories of energy expenditure. And again, my target's been 54. So that's a big, big difference in my capacity to kind of lose at the intended weekly rate of weight loss. So 1,000 calories less in this week, 400 less last week. And then this week was the first week that I was able to just say, no, I'm going to prioritize my training. I've got to do this. So I came back in at 56. So I actually got a little bit more this week, and I'm very happy I did. And I'll have to try and do another pretty big week this week up until Thursday. So I guess that is one of the biggest struggles for me with my activity levels. If we come back over to my weight data, obviously I was just kind of going through and talking a little bit about, what are some of the reasons why I'm not going to be coming in as lean, or at least I don't think I'm going to be able to. Just with the short number of days left for this week, it's not going to be a full week where I can get in another 5,400, unfortunately. But we will see. I'm going to try my absolute best over the next few days, and you'll see I'm making some adjustments to my calories this week too, because I can't do any more exercise. So the only way that I can continue to create the deficit to lose that last little bit of body fat would be through caloric restriction. Okay, so let's have a look at my last couple of weeks' numbers in terms of calories. So I did start tracking again. It's been very challenging, but I've made myself do it. So I came in last week. This is the week that I haven't done a summary for yet, at 103% compliant to my overall calorie target, and my protein was down. So you can see here I was at 88%. So that means I ate more carbohydrates and more fat than I had anticipated, and I did not eat enough protein. So it wasn't a perfect week of nutrition. It's probably one of my worst weeks in terms of protein, but I'm not going to beat myself up about it. I did my absolute best in prepping all of the things that I needed, and I was also really, really hungry. So I kind of just opted for calorie compliance instead of also trying to hit my protein, and that would have meant I'd go over even more. So you can see here my average weekly protein intake last week was 110 grams, and my goal has been to get to about 125. So given the circumstances, I'm really proud that I actually didn't go crazy over my total calories, because at the end of the day, that is what's going to help me lose weight. The downside, I guess, of trading out carbs and fats in lieu of protein is that if you do that for long enough, it can start to compromise your lean body mass. And I guess for me, I'm less worried about that at the moment because I'm competing in bikini. If I was in a different situation where I hadn't, been lifting weights for 2 decades and I didn't have that much muscle mass, this would not be an ideal scenario to be in. So I'm sitting here kind of going, touch wood. Thank God I've got so many years of muscle, because if I did lose a little bit, it's not going to be the end of the world because of this lower level of muscularity for bikini. But that was last week's nutrition. You can see my fiber was a little bit low, and there were a couple of days here, Friday through Sunday, where again, I'm trying to balance my life. I know how stressful my weeks are, and I wanted to be able to get out of the house, go and enjoy, something in a restaurant, and just kind of let my mind have a little bit of a break and not have to prep everything, all of my meals. So my fiber was a little bit lower last week, just for those 3 days. But you can see when I was in the work mode, I've got everything prepped. I've got quite a bit of diversity here, but high is 43 grams of fiber, 28 grams of fiber, 27. I had a couple of 18s. And again, I'm just trying to balance feeling satiated here in my stomach with also feeling satiated, here in my mind. So it's not crazy high, this number. And in terms of health, what I would recommend to my clients or anybody, and I will certainly revert to this once I've got some more flexibility with my calories and my brain power, that number will go back up to, well over 30 grams. That's pretty standard for me. Most days when I'm not also trying to cut calories, you've got to really balance satiating, filling foods, but then not pushing so hard with just fibrous foods to hit that hunger cue that you start to develop an unhealthy relationship with food. And as you guys know, I am not about that. I have spent years of my life trying to work through that disordered eating past, and I'm really proud that I'm still where I am today. So that was last week. Let's go over and have a look at my exercise for that week. So it was pretty good in terms of my total energy expenditure. I'm 300 calories short for the week, or 400 calories short, no, almost 320 calories short for the week. So, if you divide that over 7 days, we're talking like my energy balance was about 40 calories less than what it needed to be, which is fairly insignificant. So I'm not unhappy with this number, but it's the fact that it's so close to my competition. I would have loved to have been a bit higher, but that is me just doing everything that I can, short of just going, okay, I'm not going to see anybody. I'm not going to have a life. And that would make me miserable. And this is meant to be a fun hobby that I enjoy doing. So I'm happy with that week. My overall weekly energy expenditure through my resistance training, again, you can just see my capacity to kind of show up and be present in my training sessions is really struggling at the moment. And again, that's not how I want to train. And I'm so glad that this is the last week. And I'm so excited to see how I go on the weekend. I hope that it's all been worth it. The experience is always a tough one, but I do think that every time I put myself in this situation, I know that it's growing me and thickening my skin and making me a little tougher. And, there's an expression that says, I've never met a strong person with an easy past. So I kind of use that mantra or that motto when I, voluntarily put myself in positions of difficulty. So, it's nice to overcome an obstacle, but you can just see here how that can actually influence your ability to push and work hard. So my weekly energy expenditure just through my new resistance training program, so I've got 4 workouts here, was only $14.88. I mean, my goal has been to get to 2,200 with those sessions. So it's quite a bit lower than what I had been doing previously, but thankfully I've been able to make it up through doing some intentional HIIT workouts and a little bit more less cardio. You can see some of the minutes here. There's 2 sessions or 2 big walks that I did that at 90 minutes instead of 60. Now, again, if I was a different person coming into this where maybe I didn't have the muscle mass that I do, if I was working with a client that was under muscled and needed to grow into this show or at least maintain what they've got, this might not be the best scenario for them. So again, I feel very grateful that I've had 2 decades of lifting behind me to kind of carry me through this. But you can just see this kind of output, and I know how I'm feeling when I'm training, hasn't been great, but I'm getting it done, and that's about the best that I can do. So that was a good week overall. My average steps were higher than what I needed to be, which again is kind of covering my ass right now. But if we move into the last 7 days, so reviewing Monday the 10th through to Sunday the 16th, so just yesterday. Again, like I said, my weight's up at 136.4 due to my menstrual cycle, but I also wanted to point out some other variables that I haven't been tracking, but I know kind of loosely what's going on, and that's my sodium intake. So you can see here my sodium intake is actually up by probably 300 or 400 milligrams, which is a decent percentage of my average. And that's going to also shift me in a positive direction. And something else that I did as well, just kind of thinking about how is my body weight so different now compared to the 3 weeks leading into my last show. So I actually did a little bit of a summary here. So I want to read this out to you. You're not going to necessarily see it on the screen. So hopefully I do a good job at explaining this. If we think back to my last lot of shows, I had 3 weeks leading into where I took some averages. My average calories in the last 3 weeks leading up to my last show were 1306. This show, my average calories for the last 3 weeks have been 1291. So I'm actually doing better for all intensive purposes in meeting my caloric goal, which is obviously what's going to help drive that fat loss. Now, if we move down to have a look at my carbohydrate, that was one thing that I thought, maybe that's what's pushed my weight up a little bit. Not because I've put on, crazy amounts of body fat, but maybe that's influencing my weight through glycogen storage and more water retention in my muscle. So I had a look at my carbs for the 3 weeks leading into last show versus this time. It's negligible. So 115 grams was my average carb intake for the last comp. And then for this competition, my average has been 123 grams. So it's a very, 8 grams difference in carbs, on average is pretty insignificant. However, one thing that I don't know, and I can't be certain because I don't track this, is alcohol consumption. So I do recall my last prep probably prioritizing protein a little bit more. And I also don't recall prioritizing or going out for dinners and saying, I want a carbohydrate source. I was kind of omitting my, like an appetizer and get, it's me, it's bread. If I wanted to have some bread, though I really liked it back then, I might have actually opted for, the glass of wine or, an old fashioned or something like that. Whereas this time around, I've noticed that my hunger is substantially higher. And I think, again, that's probably just due to the time that I have been dieting. I'm now at like 24 weeks. Back then I was only at like 18 weeks. So it's just more time at this low level of body fat. And I'm just really starting to feel it, And I think also psychologically, there are just different sets of circumstances that I think have led me to feel a little bit more stressed, a bit more overwhelmed, just more going on in general. So I know for me, like that food brings me comfort. Now, I know there's a healthy way to include food for comfort, and then there's an unhealthy way. And if your only coping skills are to eat emotionally, that's not a good thing. We need to be able to find more active ways of coping. As we know that food doesn't solve the problems, it can give us temporary relief, but it never really, fixes what's going on. And that could be in any domain of your life. So I do wonder whether I have, subconsciously opted to eat more of my carbohydrates through actual carbs instead of maybe having the extra glass of wine or something at dinner in the previous prep. So here's how that would influence my body weight right now. So even though my carbohydrate averages for the last 3 weeks were 123 grams, and if I look at the last 3 weeks leading into my last prep, they were 115. So again, I'd say that's insignificant for all intensive purposes. It is possible that last time I was having less carbohydrate, like true carbohydrate, which has the potential to be stored as glycogen and water, than I am having in this prep. So maybe I've been choosing, of that 123 grams, all of it, most of it is coming from actual carbohydrate sources. So consequently, my weight is sitting a little higher and I also look a little fuller, in my opinion. That was one thing that I thought was interesting. Then if I look at my steps, again, the last 3 weeks leading into my show, my average steps were 11,600. This time I'm at 12,000. So I'm doing more and I'm eating less, and my carbs are kind of the same this time around. So, you could look at this and just go, what's going on? So I'm not trying to look into it. I think it's just managing my time, to get back from, where I was at the week after my show, enjoying myself, to now I probably need one more week. And then lucky last is my energy expenditure. So this is where it was a little interesting. So the last 3 weeks of my last prep, or the last peak week, my average energy expenditure came in at 5,300, compared to this last 3 weeks leading into the nationals, it's only 4,900. So, we're looking at a pretty reasonable difference here. And that may also just mean that I'm just not getting into the same deficit that I was previously. So even though all of the other variables are slightly better, my overall weekly energy expenditure has been down on average compared to that last prep, which is why I'm not quite making the grounds up every week to get back to that low weight. So, in your situation, if you are also trying to, diet, obviously I would hope that you're not putting such pressure on yourself to be ready at a certain time. I think, take as long as you need. You still want to live life. And I don't really feel like I'm living my life right now. So it's not a great place to be. Hence why this will be my last one for a little while. But yeah, I do think it's important to kind of look at the differences in your energy expenditure, because it makes obviously a difference in your ability to lose every single week. So I thought that was interesting. If we have a look at my sodium intake this past week, I am up a little bit. So like I said, that could also be influencing my body weight on the scale. Something else that I can also just make note of is that even though I've got my tracked sodium here, this doesn't include the additional salt that I put on my food. Now, the foods that I have been making of late have probably been saltier because I'm just hungrier and I think I like salt. But I've also been using like no calorie, low calorie sauces. Just as an example, I've got like a few of the different Skinny Girl brand here in the US, which are like 10 to 15 calorie dressings. I've also been using like a diluted G. Hughes sauce, which is also pretty salty. I've also had a lot of teriyaki and soy-based dressings, at least over the last week, just eating some more foods, making sushi and things at home. So again, I'm not tracking those sauces because they're basically 0 calorie. Or if I do, I'm not putting in, the exact sodium measurement. So it's possible that even though it says here my weekly average is still 2173, it's very likely that my average sodium right now is closer to 6,000 milligrams. And that would also help to explain why my weight is up so much this week. For peak week, I really need to dial that back in. I can't be going up and down and all over the place because number one, it doesn't give me a lot of confidence about going into the show. So I want to have a stable sodium intake this week so that I can start to see my weight do what it's meant to do, usually without all of the changing circumstances. That doesn't bother me so much as I'm going through a cut because I expect it. But for this week, I need a bit more stability so that I can look my best on show day. Yeah, my average sodium has come in around 2173, and that's what I'm going to try and stick to with my food choices this week, and be very mindful that I'm tracking all those extra sources as well to make, or at least kind of getting rid of some of the really high sodium ones so that I don't have this kind of big weight fluctuation. If we look at my compliance to calories this week, I did a much better job, 1240 overall. My protein came up a little bit. I was at 94% compliant, and then I was at 97% compliant to my calories. So that was kind of intentional. I didn't want to go over again this week, so I underate on a couple of days. And my fiber, that also came back up by 5 grams. So again, there's probably like variable number 4 this week that's moving my weight back up, even though I'm doing all of the right behaviors in terms of getting me closer to this body fat goal. Coming over to have a look at my exercise for this week, as I said earlier, I got to 5,656 calories, which is great. I'm a little bit ahead of where I needed to be. So I'm like, yes, that'll keep me ahead for this week too. And then my steps came in at 12,450, which is right around the number that I've been striving for. That will be going up this week. You can see my resistance training sessions came in a little bit higher at 1698. And then I also did an extra cycle class last night. So I did my posing work last night with the Australian Posing School. Sarah has been wonderful. I'll put a little video up of me just kind of practicing my routine after I had finished a call with her. And just in chatting with her, she was like, yeah, you're not looking as lean as you did last time. And I think that just hearing it from somebody else and then having it validated through, people in my space, I was like, okay, cool. So it's not just me that's thinking this. All right, that's enough to motivate me to like go and do an extra session. So last night I did a 4th cycle for the week, and that took my weekly energy expenditure for HIIT cardio up to 1461 calories. So you can see here I did a spin on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. So they were some good sessions. I did them all out in the sun on the patio. So hot, but got it done. So I guess where to next? Let's go and take a look at what I'm going to do for the next several days. Well, it's really just 4. I'm bringing my calories down. Oh, 11:10. So I'm keeping my protein goal at 120. I'm going to keep my carbs at 90 and my fats at 30. This is the lowest calories, or equally low, as what I have ever been on. So in my previous preps, in my 2022 competition series for the World Championships for WBFF in Vegas, this was my calorie goal basically for like 4 weeks, the last 4 weeks of my show. So I'm actually kind of happy that I only needed to do this for the last 4 days. It just means that I've given myself a little bit more time, obviously, and to get to the right level of leanness. So 90 grams of carbs and 30 grams of fat. That is a miserable number and a miserable existence. So this week, there will be so much planning. I've already got some meals prepped. It will work really nicely with my sodium targets, number 1, fiber targets, number 2, calorie goals. So I have a ricotta and cottage cheese lasagna that I have made up. It's got some fiber in it through the wraps that I use as the layers. It's got really low calories. So I think each serving is about 320 calories, and it's really high in protein. I think it's about 45 grams of protein, and then it sits at 27 carb or something like that, which is really good. And then I usually serve that with just a kind of mixed side salad. So I've got that prepped. I ordered a bunch of lettuce this week and some shredded cabbage. It's like a Napa cabbage, to do some giant Caesar salads. I've really been enjoying those. I normally order that as like a side or a starter when we go out to like a steakhouse. And the last time we were at a steakhouse, I was like, oh my God, I haven't had like a fresh cob or crisp, salad in such a long time. Really enjoyed it. So I've ordered like the little bacon pieces. I've got lettuce, the shredded coleslaw or Napa cabbage. I'll do chicken with that, and then eggs. So I'll do boiled egg, and I'll omit some of the egg yolk just to keep the fats low. And then I use a very low calorie Caesar dressing. Now that has a bunch of FODMAPs in it. It's got xanthan gum, but I'm happy to forego my happy gut for the next 3 or 4 days until the Friday rolls over. That's when I take out everything. So, your GI transit time varies from person to person. It's usually anywhere from, say, 36 to 48 hours. So definitely cut all of the FODMAPs out. And I mean everything. Like, it's such a bad day. It's like nothing fun. But it's basically just water for my fluid, which is not something I normally do. Like, I exclusively drink like diet soda and coffee, and then I have a lot of liquids through like yogurts and things like that. That's a really plain Jane day. And then I'll probably also taper off again on Thursday as well, just to make sure that my gut stays happy. So bringing it back to, I guess, my macros here, I'll do the Caesar salad dressing. That's obviously got FODMAPs in it, but I'll pull that out by Thursday, which is my travel day. So I have those 2 things prepped. I've got some Jell-O as well, which I do with a yogurt, which has been really fun actually. I have like a full packet of jelly every day, which, I haven't had that since I was a kid, but it's doing its job right now. I make it into like, I guess, a yogurt parfait. So I'll have a coconut yogurt, which is by Fit and Light and Fit by Dannon. And yeah, it's coconut flavor, and it mixes so nicely with like the raspberry and the strawberry. So that's like a giant snack that is tasty enough. And I like froze strawberries and berries in there last time. Well, not froze. I let strawberries and berries set inside the jelly. So it was a little bit more fibrous, like it had something going on. Not my favorite meal. Wouldn't recommend this if you were not dieting. But that's been something that I've been having as well. And then what else have I got? I've got some different bars for some sweet stuff. I've got some Ninja Creamies prepared and a host of other things. And I've also got a bunch of veggies that I do like a stir fry with different low calorie sauces. And then I'll kind of rotate different protein sources, or I'll do like a stir fried veggie with a little bit of a protein, chicken, beef, or pork, or I guess even ground beef. And then I will just pour over like an egg white. So it's like this giant kind of omelet style thing. So very satiating, filling, lots of fiber, lots of color, and it's huge. So I mean, that satisfies my eyeballs. So that's about all I will be eating this week. It's going to be pretty boring, but it's the last week, so you kind of expect it. Over to my training. So this is something that I am going to be making an adjustment to as well. So in order to get down by another half a kilo of fat, I do need to continue being in a deficit for the next 4 days. So I will be taking my steps up to 14,000 this week. I don't have any more time to do extra exercise. I mean, I'll already be doing, HIIT sessions as is. So I'll do HIIT sessions every day this week up until probably Thursday. And that session might just be more of a miss session. And it'll probably be once I get to Tennessee, I'll go and check out a local gym or something like that, get a pass for a couple of days, and that'll allow me to do that workout on Thursday. So that'll be the last kind of thing. And again, I don't want to do anything that's inflammatory or really taxing, because I want to allow all of that water to whoosh away as opposed to keep hammering myself and then, you've got retained water. I can't do any more for any extra HIIT. I mean, if I was not going to have a job, I probably could, but I'm not. So it's not the reality. So I'll keep my 900 calories of energy expenditure. I'll knock those out this week early, and I will be doing more steps. So this is going to require me to probably do about 75 minutes of planned walking every day. I've been doing 60 as it is. And so that will hopefully take me up just a little bit more in my energy expenditure to get me to where I want to be for show day. The other metric that is going to be on my radar this week is sodium. So I went back and looked at my last couple of weeks of sodium, worked out what my average was. And like I mentioned, I'm going to be doing away with some of those really high salty products that have only really been introduced this last week or two, just to kind of bring things back down to where they were. And then I will be able to look a little bit more, I guess each day I'll be able to see myself for exactly how I am, not in response to changes in total body water through sodium. That's what I will be going on this week. I guess the next part is jumping over to have a look at the questions on YouTube. So let's do that. By the way, thank you so much for everybody that continues to show up and comment. This week there are like 30 or so comments or more, and it seems like everyone was pretty supportive with my decision to take a step back. But I think what has been really humbling for me, and I'm really appreciative of everybody commenting. It's just, someone here says, and it's been reciprocated many times, it's just really refreshing to get honesty, especially in this industry and fitness area. So yeah, I guess it's nice to be truthful and just tell it how it is. So it's not to say I'm not disappointed that I'm not going to continue to do, who knows what happens this weekend. I might get to the Olympia. I also might not. That's probably more likely. I mean, not many people, I don't know anyone personally that stepped in, taken out a regional show, taken out nationals, and then stepped on the pro stage the same day and also won the pro show. I don't know of anybody who's done that. Maybe you guys are bigger fans of the sport and know more about the history of bodybuilding, but it would be incredible if I did that, but I don't know it's possible. But hey, that's my goal, so we'll see. But I mean, I can't say that I'm not really disappointed in not being able to keep going, but again, I think my overall mental health and well-being and my happiness are much more important. So there's that. All right, let's dive into some of these questions. Okay, so somebody actually made a really great suggestion here in the comments. They go on to say, I love your content and following your journey. I've been wishing for years and years to see you on the NPC stage. As a super busy entrepreneur with multiple businesses and an active bikini pro, I've too had to figure out strategies around nutrition. She says, I love prepping my food, outsourcing to a meal company here, and that has really helped me stay on track. My other hack is making a few extra portions, yes, and some of my go-to meals and freezing them. Yes, I already do that. It's great. But I think the downside is that even if you have those foods prepared, and I mean, I make the same recommendations to my clients too, but there is this inherent, desire to eat different types of foods for a lot of us. And even though you've got something that's available in your refrigerator, and yes, you can apply that kind of self-discipline, you can do it, absolutely. But I think it's when it becomes, or it puts a strain on your relationship with certain foods. So for me, I've tried to be really mindful of, if I don't feel exactly like what I have prepared, as somebody that's had, I struggled with an eating disorder for 15 years, I kind of acknowledge, okay, well, there's this decision that I could make and have the food that's prepared, or as to not develop this dysfunctional relationship with food X, usually something fun, sweet, and a little bit more enjoyable, I'm going to choose to have that instead. Even if it means I go over my calories slightly, like I try to have a bit more flexibility with it so that I can maintain a really healthy relationship with foods. But I do think that's a really, really good strategy. I mean, if you don't have something planned, then there's no decision or no option at all. So I think, plan to fail and fail to plan is, I guess, the expression. She goes on to say, have you ever considered a meal prep service? So yes, I have. In fact, for most of 2022 and 2021, I actually had a personal chef, which was awesome. However, the downside of being where I've relocated, I'm in a different area, and I have just been go, that I haven't had time to even find somebody. There was one lady that I found who did some meal prep for me, and I wasn't even competing. It was just, I really would love to get some support with some cooking because I don't have the time, but she's no longer prepped and she's not in this area anymore. So I just kind of had to let that go. The downside of meal prep services for me is because I have IBS, there are such few options available that aren't, seasoned and covered with garlic and onion. Like everything has those two ingredients because it makes food taste so good. So, I've been on so many websites and I'm like, I get excited. I'm like, yes, this looks so good. The calories might actually work. And then I'll go and look at the ingredients and, it's like one of the top two ingredients. So, you can call into some of these places, or you can do the batch, chicken or batch beef brisket or batch sweet potato, and it's just all plain. But to me, that is not how I want to prep. Like, I don't enjoy eating that way. Like, I'm such a foodie. I think you guys probably already know that by now. But I really enjoy like eating like fun stuff. And yeah, I kind of think going through a meal prep service to just have plain shredded chicken or other plain protein sources, or even just chopped veggies, it's not as alluring as the idea of actually having a meal that's already prepared for you. Because then there's still going to be some element of prepping anyway. And I mean, I already do that. So it probably wouldn't be much different in terms of time savings. So one of my goals is to actually open a meal prep company service again. I used to have one when I was in Australia, in fact. It was called Prep My Meals, but I haven't had an opportunity to prioritize it of late, obviously. But it's something that I would like to do that actually caters to the people that have IBS and just other food intolerances in general. So whether it's a dairy intolerance or a gluten intolerance, and perhaps even cater to like a vegan, vegetarian community as well, I think that would be a really great market to tap into, because I know for me, out of convenience, it would be so nice to have a company that, can implement FODMAP-friendly recipes, but they don't exist. At least I'm not aware of one. If you guys know, help me out. Oh my God, I would love to do that. Even if I'm not prepping, just to have things available that are tasty and fun. So time saving and convenient. Okay, next question. Somebody has asked about the Excel tracking sheet and they're saying they're having a lot of fun with it. Great. There are a few things about getting started that have confused me. And could you do a tutorial on all of the initial inputs? So I will say, Sarah, thank you for the question. If you go to my YouTube channel and type in coaching with Holly or coaching with Team Be a Body, I do a tutorial on those coaching sheets. So I hope that gives you enough insight as to how to use them. But that would be the next step, is if you would like to get more out of those sheets, obviously working with me or my team. We would love to support you through that. We have lots of different coaching programs and packages, and we have our Love Yourself Fit campaign that kicks off in just a few weeks now. July 3 is the final day that you can register. And we have two different ways that you can enter into the Love Yourself Fit campaign. So we have a DIY, which is basically a self-guided, you get an educational book, you get me in there talking, there's an Audible form, there are videos that kind of support the calculations to help that process and make it a little easier. There's weekly Q&As. Every week I show up to a Q&A and you can come on and join me live and ask any questions that you like and I'll answer it there. Or you could submit your questions to the question box that we send out to all of our participants each week, and then they are basically fielded in as I go through that Q&A. So the DIY is a great, really affordable option. It's only $130. You get access to my app and a really great, like-minded community. The step up from that is working with either me or our coaches. So we have an incredible team of coaches with different areas of expertise, from hormone specialists and women that are going through menopause. So we have Coach Shay, who absolutely adores that community. In fact, I think all of our girls do, to be honest. We want to help people feel good about themselves. But Shay really focuses on perimenopause and menopausal ladies that are struggling with their health goals. We have, as a new coach, Coach Caitlin. We also have Coach Dr. Gabrielle Fundero, and then we also have Coach Dr. Shannon Russell. So again, each of the ladies have a slightly different area of expertise, but between the three of them, we've got PhDs, doctorates in physical therapy, gut microbiome, dietetics, eating disorders, like you name it, they're in there. So that's kind of the next step up. If you're struggling to kind of navigate and know how to make changes in those coaching sheets, whilst it's nice to have them, it's like the practical application is then, having somebody to help guide you through that. So we'd love to have you for the Love Yourself Fit Challenge. So please take a look at that. I'll put the links in the description for this YouTube video. Okay, so somebody else asked me about my spiralizer. I know that in some of the recipes that are available in the master recipe sheet that I'd been doing for this prep, and I will put some new ones in there this week. So keep a lookout for those. It's got all of the recipes that I've used throughout this contest prep, how many serving sizes it makes, it tells you the macros, and then obviously in this case, there are some specialty pieces of equipment that you need. So the spiralizer that I use for zoodles, for either yellow squash noodles or zucchini noodles or whatever noodle you want, I put the link down in the description. So you can get it at Target. I think it's about $40 and it does the job. It's very cool. Okay, the next question is, hey Holly, I absolutely love your content. As somebody who's recently come out of a 5-month diet phase for a photo shoot, I was curious as to how you were going to approach your building your calories back up to maintenance. I see on your Instagram story about your perspectives changing about reverse dieting, and I was interested in hearing a little bit more. Yeah, so I definitely have softened my opinion and how outwardly spoken I am about reverse dieting over the last couple of years. And it really is just in response to some of the more recent research that has become available and the kinds of positive adaptations or negative adaptations that we do see. And they are not as profound as I think we would have originally thought, at least changes that are not just described by changes in lean body mass or other fat-free tissue. So that's kind of the reason why I've softened my tone a little bit. Rather, I think that we can see positive changes to somebody's basal metabolic rate just through, getting to work on a building phase. And that really is what's driving our capacity to get our calories up, is the speed at which you can acquire muscle. So as soon as I finish this competition, I could very well calculate my maintenance calories. Unfortunately, they're going to be pretty low just based on the fact that I'm such a sedentary person. So I have to do a lot of exercise. I don't want to maintain this kind of output and I don't want to maintain this kind of low calorie amount either. So I have to be open and okay with putting on a little bit of body fat pretty quickly. And that's fine by me. I mean, I have done so much work on just being happy and comfortable in my skin. I will say the thing that bothers me more right now that I'm trying to work through as a woman is my skin here, like in my face. I've had such bad acne the last couple of weeks. And I think it's because of the sudden change in my body fat percentage after my last show. So I went from, probably close to 8 or 9%. And then I went straight back up to 13% very quickly. And I think that kind of incentivizes and encourages the synthesis of your own natural hormones. So you guys know that I'm taking testosterone or having testosterone therapy at the moment to get my levels just back up into the normal reference range. So because my energy balance went so high so quickly, I think what that does is it increases my own natural or endogenous production of testosterone. So if I sit, on a good day when having my hormone replacement therapy, if I'm at 79 milligrams or micromoles per deciliter, right? It probably takes me up to maybe 90 or so. And I think at that place for me, is kind of when I just start to get this ring of acne. So I'm currently doing some work on myself about just letting go of this unrealistic beauty standard that exists in the world. That not everybody has a filter perfect face. It's just a filter. Or maybe that's all they worry about and that's all they do. Or they've just been blessed with those kinds of genetics and they don't have fluctuating hormones. But I also have to be appreciative of the fact that right now, my life looks like this. So I'm like, Holly, your hormones are going to be all over the place. That's okay. It will settle down at some point. This isn't permanent. It's just a temporary thing. You're going to survive. So, that's something that I'm having to work on because I feel like, your face is your representation. And I've kind of struggled with this. Oh my God, I look like an acne teenager. Like, when you see the kids that have just got like cystic acne and it looks so painful. I've had a couple of those just in and around like my cheek area, and it's been really tough to just, first and foremost, it really hurts. You guys have probably had acne before at some point. It's quite painful. And then like, I don't want to put makeup on. And then, because of the work that I do, I don't always just want to show up looking homeless. Obviously, you don't have to wear makeup every day. And most of the time I don't when I'm doing my check-ins. But, when I'm recording, nobody wants to see like big acne on screen. So that's been something I'm working through. But yeah, I think to kind of bring this back to your conversation about reverse dieting and building, so much of the positive adaptations that you see are due to doing a build. So I don't want to go off track. That was a little bit of a deviation there. But anyways, I'm probably not going to be looking at what my known maintenance calories are. I'll be like, you know what? This is what's realistic for me right now. This is what I'd like to be able to do. This is where I know I'm going to feel better. It's going to enhance and aid my recovery. It's going to allow me to sleep better. It's going to allow me to perform better in my day-to-day life and then also in the gym. So I will probably take my calories right back up to like 1800 or something pretty quickly. So I would expect to see my body weight and my body fat as a result kind of creep back up to where I was earlier. So before I talked about being at 136 pounds to 138, that's probably where I'll jump up almost immediately. And then I will slowly try to just keep working through my training sessions. Hopefully the quality of my sessions will start to improve, and then I'll be able to get more out of those training sessions, and that will allow me to kind of recover a small amount of muscle that I probably have lost through a few less than ideal weeks. So I'm not going to be intentionally, smashing down, so many calories. It will be more just a mindful approach, mindful of my protein. If I feel like having more carbohydrate or fat on some days, maybe I will. But, I also try to make decisions based on how I'm feeling too. So, even though I know mentally, because I've been deprived a little bit through this prep, I'm aware of that. And I know that my internal desire for some of these foods is not probably matched with a healthy relationship with these foods. So in knowing that, I'm not going to continue to deprive myself, but I'm going to allow some of those foods back in, but not to the extent that I think I would be governed if I just let my intuitive thoughts kind of decide for me what I'm going to eat, because that would be a really unusually large amount of food, which would not be, it's not going to leave me to feel very good. So yeah, I think I'll jump back into my normal kind of training, not really a whole lot different in terms of the lifting. I'll let go of some of that cardio. Yes, I'll gain a bit of body fat, and then try and just reestablish something that's a little bit more balanced for me. So I hope that answers that question. Okay, so next question. Hey Holly, I really admire your dedication and perseverance in all areas of life. Thank you. It's very inspirational to see your prep. I'd appreciate if you could answer the question about your training. You had mentioned working on creating more volume in the upper glute area before hitting the stage again. Is it possible to build muscle during a cutting phase, especially at the end of an extensive calorie deficit phase when body fat is already very low? My impression was that there needs to be a calorie surplus, or maybe the exercises in your training for the upper glute serve a different function than just building muscles. Thank you. Wish you the best for the upcoming competition. Oh, thank you. Okay, so this is a difficult one to answer because I don't know that the capacity to build muscle, whether somebody's going to lose muscle, is always the same. I think it really depends on the person, and there are so many different variables that we'd need to consider to really have a sound understanding of whether that's happening or not. You're exactly right. As somebody gets very lean and they don't have a whole lot of adipose tissue to support, new tissue growth, building muscle becomes very, very difficult. You do need to have energy available to do that, believe it or not. It's like building a house. You can't build a house if you don't have the materials to build the house with. It's no different for, creating muscle, a more muscular physique. So you do need to have some energy. The only area where I can see maybe that happening is if you make a really big shift in your training volume. So let's say your training volume might have been 10 working sets per week on your glutes, and then in a very short period of time, despite not being in a large calorie surplus and also being very lean, really shifting your volume to a high volume weekly set number. So maybe going up to like 30 working sets on the glutes per week. I think you would still be able to, over a short period of time, achieve some muscle growth. But again, we've got to think about the speed at which muscle grows anyway, and that is very slow. If we were to break down that over the course of, 12 weeks, if the average growth in like the rectus femoris, the quadricep muscle, for instance, is about 0.2 or 0.3 over 12 weeks, if we divide that by 12, that means that each week you're getting 0.025 of a centimeter of muscle growth. So if we look at what I could have realistically achieved in 6 weeks, we're talking 0.15 of a millimeter. So, when you get feedback from judges that are like, oh, come back and look, fill out your upper glutes next time. If you've got 6 weeks, you ain't filling out a whole lot of anything. The only way that you might be able to change how you look on stage would be manipulating like carbohydrates and, filling out more and allowing more water to look fuller. And that's what a lot of these smaller girls that don't have a lot of muscle have to do. There's some pretty big manipulations of those macronutrients to create the illusion that their body looks different. So I'm in the opposite end of the spectrum. I am trying to basically go in as flat and depleted as I can because I already have too much muscle. With the exception of, obviously, I was told your upper glute shelf could be a little more, but there's only so much I could have done in 6 weeks. I think that I've done as much as I could. I definitely took my training volume up in my glutes, but we'll have to see. I don't know that a 0.15 of a centimeter is going to look like a whole lot of noticeable difference on stage. And this is why, you take time off. You go off and you have a full year to do the work, to build, more muscle, because you don't see these changes happening very quickly. So I hope that helps answer that question. Hey, Holly, thank you so much for putting out these videos every week. I've loved following you along your journey to the Olympia, and you are so generous to provide such helpful information each week. You are very welcome. I have a question regarding weight gain in the off season. I compete in a weight class-based sport, so I need to weigh about 54 kilograms before water cut for meet day for this competition season, which is usually the spring and summer. I had a hard time cutting down from 60 kilos this year. I don't think that my body enjoys being this lightweight, but I'd like to stay in this weight class for competitive reasons. For example, records. It's awesome that you're at a position where you might even be taking out records. Congratulations. How would you recommend gaining in the off season in order to maximize muscle gain with the knowledge that you might have to cut back down for competition? Let's say there are 6 to 8 months between competitions. I'm about 15 to 17% body fat at 54 kgs. So this is an interesting scenario because, the longer we train, and if you're training, following scientific principles, you would hope that over time you are getting more and more and more and more muscular. There may become a point where you being at 54 kgs, and again, I know that's before you do your cutting, for meet day, puts you at a position where your muscle mass is so high and your body fat has to be so low to do that it doesn't make sense to stay in that category anymore. I've had that with several clients that have been competing in weightlifting and powerlifting for a long time. And just through, years of hard training and doing the work, they've kind of grown out of that category. They're now up in a new division. And yes, it sucks. It means that you may not necessarily be competitive anymore for setting world records or whatever it is. But that would be the potential reality, I think as we look at the female body, we aren't naturally meant to be that lean. I mean, you're already sitting at a very low body fat percentage, 15 to 17%. I mean, that's what I walk around at as in my off season. And that's a really lean body, and then looking at what we get down to for competitions, that's not walking around body composition style. It looks cool. Yes, it's impressive. Yes, you can compliment somebody on how, hard they work, but here's me going, it's not worth it. But the reality is women aren't meant to be that lean. So if you put on a lot of muscle, you getting down to that 15% body fat from being up at 60 kilos, it's going to get really uncomfortable, unfortunately. So, it might mean that you have to give yourself more time to cut down to get there, whereas previously you didn't have to kind of strive that little bit more, and it wasn't as uncomfortable because you're at a higher body fat percentage. So just kind of loosely looking at this, let's just say you give yourself, if you're starting at 60 kilos and you're going to operate under the premises of a really modest to conservative weekly rate of weight loss, and you target like 0.6% of your body weight. So not 1%, not 0.8, 0.6. That's what my goal was for my competition, to make it fit with my life. It's not too difficult each week to create that kind of deficit. Right now I'm sitting at 1 or 1.2 and it's horrible. So let's say 0.6 is where you start your weekly rates of weight loss. That means that it would take you 16 weeks or 4 months to lose the weight to get from 60 to 64. You'd be losing at about 0.36 of a kilogram each week. So if you do that math, 0.36 multiplied by 16, that's going to get you the amount of weight loss that you need to get from 54 to 60. So that's your 6 kilos right there. So that's 4 months you have to put aside just to cutting down to that. If you plan on doing all of that through, fat loss and no water or weight manipulation. So really that's only giving you 4 more months, or probably less here. It could be 2 to 4 months left to actually do any, appreciable building. So I think, it just gives you something to think about. If it's getting really challenging, there might be a point where you have to decide, if I want to keep performing well, and also want to not diet in this way that's making it feel like I'm now a bodybuilding competitor and it's really hard. Maybe stepping up into the next weight category is the way to go, or you may have to get more aggressive with the way in which you do your manipulation of the other variables that can help scale changes. So, I've worked with many of these weight competitors or weight category competitions and sports for this exact reason. We'll get way more aggressive with influencing all of the variables that can change scale weight that have nothing to do with body fat. So, we're looking at manipulating fiber. We're looking at making major manipulations to their macronutrient ratios, getting out or moving more towards like a ketogenic style of diet just to get the weight on the scale down, but not necessarily influence their energy availability so they can keep training and performing well. We'll also do other like sodium loading protocols, some exposure to heat if necessary. That's kind of like the last resort. There are a lot of things that we can do to help somebody lose like somewhere around 5% of their body weight without making any changes to their body fat percentage at all. So that's my first port of call for those types of athletes, because we want to keep them eating a good amount of calories. We want to have them feeling good and performing well, and they don't necessarily need to lose body fat. It's not part of the obligations. And in fact, as you guys know, the leaner you get, like your performance tanks, you don't feel great, and that's not really conducive for, a performance-based sport. So if you are interested, that's something that I work with in terms of clientele. I have several people that do these types of sports and would be happy to help you. I just coached a recent athlete she's won nationals, and she's set many records. So she's absolutely killing it. Her testimonial is actually on my website. But if you would like some more support with this to make that whole process a little bit more comfortable, please reach out. I'd love to help you. So thank you everybody for all of your awesome comments and support. It's nice to kind of feel validated in those decisions. And I think honestly, I have to practice what I preach. I would be saying the same things to my clients too. So I can't very well, say one thing outwardly to my clients and then not practice the same thing myself. So I know definitely a smart decision, but I am extremely excited for this weekend. I've got a new bikini. I'm not going to show that around yet, but it's in the same kind of color family, but it is even more like glittery and awesome. So I can't wait to get up and do it. I've got lots of people coming to the show who are flying in from all places to support. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. I really enjoyed the last competition, like the whole lead up into the show. It was a little bit more relaxing than the WBFF because there isn't like a bazillion commitments where you've got like a Met Gala and a red carpet event and a media day, like where you're going to be, dressed up to the nines, as fun as that is. And it's a cool experience. And I wouldn't want to take any of that away. I'm so grateful to have been in that federation, but this is definitely more Holly style. I like getting dressed up, but when you have to do it and you're trying to just, get through and relax, it's been a whole lot more enjoyable. So I'm really looking forward to Thursday through Saturday and to see how I go. So hopefully this video goes up on like Wednesday or Thursday and you guys are seeing it before I actually head out. I will be heavy on my social media stories. So if you aren't following me on Instagram, please go and follow me along. It's Holly T. Baxter. I'll put up my little journey as I go. And I guess I'll see y'all on the other side. So wish me luck.